Good evening, our fun fiends out there in online land. It's time to get excited because you know what time it is. Lights, camera, some awesome guests, an amazing audience, and action. I am your host, Dan Stagliano. Welcome to another monster episode of the show. Now. When you go to a zoo, let me finish up, you'll see some animals, and you know that. So consider us here at the show a type of zoo. In that, over here, you're going to find some of the most awesome, amazing content creators from around the world, and we always bring it to you live right here on YouTube. So, should you have a question or a comment, do not hesitate to drop it in the comments below so we can get you some instant feedback. Also, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a live episode. Now, today on the show, we have yet another first. How do we keep doing this? I hear you ask, and that's a good question. And I answer you because today's special guests are the creative talents and gorgeous faces behind the popular podcast and YouTube channel, The Naked Wine Podcast. They are Kendra Moriah and Remington Riehl. Welcome to the show, you gorgeous kids. Listen, thank you for taking some time out of your podcast today to join us on our show. How are you both doing?
We're doing great.
We're doing great. We usually start our podcast with one of these. Cheers.
Ooh, wait a minute. What have you got there? Show us. What is that?
We are drinking a natural sparkling wine, otherwise known as a pet nat. And
This is
it
kind
is
of
from
a
San
nat.
Diego.
Pet nat, nothing, not a bug, but it's French for petulant natural. And this kind of hits two obscure things: a different kind of sparkling wine called a pet nat, and it's also called orange wine.
And it's not
Team, can I? That's a sparkling you just told us, right? That looks a little cloudy. Is it? I guess it's supposed to be cloudy like that.
Yeah, so the way that this wine is made,
See the yeast in the bottom there.
That is all the native yeast.
Oh, wow.
Still in there, and there's no added sugars. This one was actually foot stomped, I believe, in their vineyard, Los Pilares.
So we have some foot juice in there too.
Little foot fungus. It's part of the terroir.
But it's super
Maybe that's
yummy.
what we're seeing down the bottom there.
No, that's yeast. It's like the basic alcohol equation for those probably people know, but yeast plus sugar equals alcohol and CO2. So a pet nat, they basically put the juice that's still fermenting inside of this. Just popped it. Instead of a cork like a champagne bottle would usually have, it has a pop top.
Kind of like you would see like on a beer bottle.
And they stick it on top, and they just let the fermentation keep going until the yeast dies. So these are all little dead yeast soldiers, but because of them, we got alcohol in here, and they're bubbles with CO2. So it's like a natural way to produce CO2 and make a sparkling.
Yeah, and they don't add any sugar into there. Natural wines normally are just very minimal intervention. That's why this one, is made with a lot of love. Pampered grapes. They stomped them with their feet. They're not using a lot of crazy machinery. So that you're really getting like this fantastic, healthy, delicious, natural wine.
Juice. fermented grape juice.
Yeah.
It's juicy wine. It's all natural. So the only sugars in there, then, if I've understood this correctly, please help me out here. The only sugars then would be literally what is in the grapes, the fruit. That's it. Nothing else added.
That's good. They're not adding anything. They're not tampering with it, with the grapes or with the natural essence.
Hence the term natural wine, or another term thrown around. For any listeners that are curious that want to try to go find this, is like low intervention wine. And low intervention just applies to
wine.
The cellar. They're not intervening and tampering with it as much.
Yeah, they're not adding any chemicals to enhance, the taste or the color, which in conventional wine they do a lot of that, unfortunately, which will pump up the alcohol. Which will also pump up, how sweet it is.
If it's not purple enough for consumers' liking, they'll add mega purple and actually color it, dye it.
So this one is actually only 12% alcohol. You can see here on the label. And a good hint for a natural wine is they're normally lower in alcohol.
That was going to be my next question, actually. So, are we going to notice a difference between alcohol content levels between a natural wine and something that has been intervened with, if I can term it that way?
There are a bunch of hints, and off the top of my head, for like anybody who doesn't, if you don't know the producers or like the importers or whatnot, if you're just looking at it, sometimes you stare in front of that shelf of wines like a dummy. I mean, we love wine and we run a wine podcast, but I do that all the time. I'm like, go for the cute label. Yeah. But no, if you want to know some hints, the alcohol content, a lot of times, most, not all.
Good hint. It doesn't mean the wine's got bad. If anything, it means it's got probably more character and more flavor. If you can see some clouds and some sediment.
If it's, this was obviously not filtered because it has the dead yeast still in the bottom, but if it's cloudy, then it wasn't fined, which is another process to basically like decloud the wine.
But it's probably important to back up and say, like, there's no natural wine label. Like, how there's like the organic certified label. There's nothing like that for natural wine. So you just kind of have to, like, as Remington said, if you don't know the producer or the distributor, that's obviously a very good hint. But then there are like clues. It's not like any rules, but things that can kind of help you in a wine store figure out, like, is this natural or not? So Remington named a couple of really good ones, like the lower in alcohol.
Finding and filtering.
Also, you can kind of like see this label like is not very conventional looking. There's no Chateau de blah 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 on there. It's kind of like a creative label. And natural wines tend to be more like Remington said it so good on the podcast a few episodes ago, like your little kindergartner made the label with crayons.
Like a kindergartner's crayon drawing, it's definitely a natural wine for sure.
So we've got simple labels, we've got lower wine content. These are a couple of things we've been looking for. Now, I don't know what the next step is back from novice when it comes to wine, but that's me. Welcome to the show. I have no idea. So these are a couple of the things I'm looking for. I'm interested to know, is this a new phenomenon in wines? Is this something that's only recently started, or is this something that's been going on for a long time in the wine industry? As in natural wines.
A very long time.
That's a very long time, like
biblical,
pre-Jesus.
Probably the first natural wines, like when Jesus turned the water into wine, is my assumption. But it's basically it's always been going on, especially in countries like Italy and France and in Europe. I mean, this is no news to them. I think for maybe and not in the United States either, but for North America, I think it's become more like part of pop culture and more trendy, and people are more as the whole like organic movement swept the nation. This is kind of the next thing.
Super trendy, just as trendy as like if you're in a big city or even not. Like there's this overwhelming health and wellness. Like spaces out of the water. So you tell somebody, hey, you like to drink with your pals and your mates, and you want to drink something that's better for you and still get tipsy and have a good time at the same time, and maybe not have as bad of a hangover. Boom. Like it's super trendy in that respect. Preservatives, but things you would use in the field when you farm on a large scale. Pesticides.
It's really good to think about natural wine the way you think about your produce at the store. So, if you're wanting to eat organic, then you're obviously looking for like the organic tomato as opposed to the non-organic tomato. And it's just the same with wine. It's just going back to the roots of how wine originally, was discovered and created and made with no tampering and chemicals and big equipment, like Remington said. So because
back a couple thousands of years ago,
Sorry, Remington, continue. Sorry, my man. Finish that thought, my man. Finish that thought.
I just train of thought, like 2,000 years ago, they were literally picking the grapes from the field by hand. They didn't have a machine to do it for them. They were foot stomping it because they didn't have a machine to do it for them. And after that, the yeast is already on the grapes. You don't have to add yeast to the grapes in order to make it ferment. There's wild yeast on almost everything. And so they just stuck it in a qvevri, an amphora, a barrel, and boom, it'll start making wine on its own. And maybe they'll run it through whatever kind of sieve they have, but of course they don't have agents to decloud it, bottle it, boom, there it is, and that's what they're drinking. And it's basically just like reverting to the simple process of how wine has been made for thousands of years without enhancing it.
So it's actually very old. It's a very old thing. It's just new trend. It's trendy now. Yeah.
It's trendy. I mean, and like you said before, I mean, everything, the health, wellness, which is an industry I know a fair bit about, it is always in, especially now it becomes more and more and more important. And I guess this
good one. A wine can be organic and not necessarily be a natural wine. In fact, if you see a wine and it's got a big organic...
There's this little infographic on like what makes up a natural wine and like ranking it on the label or not, whether they have the certification or not, because that's just the thing. It's kind of spendy and it takes a lot of time and it's hard to control, especially if you have neighboring vineyards to get the organic certification. A lot of natural wines will be farmed organically, but not certified.
Yeah.
So as long as it's being farmed in a sustainable, organic, or biodynamically way.
Yeah. 2,
the native yeast for me. Keeping that native funk, the native terroir. It's like part of the land, the yeast in LA versus the yeast in New York with their bagels, and SF with their tartine sourdough bread. Like the yeast is a big deal. It differs in what makes the product unique, I would say. Probably like 3 and 4, like defining and filtering, or maybe tied somewhere in there with not adding additives, including sugar and coloring agents. Kind of last on the list is a big kind of hot term, like SO2 sulfites. No added sulfites. All wine labels, if you've ever looked on the back of them, generally say contain sulfites.
Yeah, even natural wine.
Exactly. They're in all wines, aren't they?
They're a naturally. Yeah. How'd you know that for being such a below novice?
I swear I am below novice on this team. I just know that's one thing, that sulfites appear in wine. So that one I knew.
Yeah, and they're naturally occurring.
Yeah, so you'll have sulfate wine, but they're not adding any extra sulfites, which conventional wine does.
So I kind of lost count.
The biggest thing, the biggest take out of this. No, you were close to 7, Remington. I had my fingers going. You were almost at 7, buddy. I tell you what we might do. We might put a little list in the description down there later. You were near enough. You were near enough, buddy. Once you tip over 3 or 4, you're over halfway there. We count you as there. We might put a little dot point down below for our viewers later, just so they know what your list is, Remington. Because that's a
my experience. If they're producing natural wine, they're just doing natural wine. I don't know that that's a rule or anything.
I think for a couple quick reasons, like farming wise, if it's common to maybe have an organic certified vineyard that you're sourcing grapes from and then a non, but there's generally one cellar, and either you're killing the native yeast and what we call pitching yeast, adding your own yeast, or adding additives and coloring and sulfites amongst all of them, or you're not. So when it comes down to the cellar practices, you generally would have 2 separate cellars doing 2 separate ways.
Right, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you before you finish. I think that's going to be a big trend for the future. That's my magic crystal ball prediction, is that because this is such a hot thing, natural wine, I think big labels are going to start pumping out their own natural wines. Because they're going to, if you're not hopping on the train, you're going to fall behind.
But it is,
you're going to miss out, basically.
Yeah.
Here to stay.
But back to your question, Dan, it is so important to note that organic wine and natural wine, not the same thing. They can be both, but
they are not the same thing. Good. Yeah. And that was a distinction I wanted to make, because generally you hear organic and you think, okay, organic, natural, unprocessed, no additives, no pesticides, like you said before, Remington. But I think it's an important distinction to say, hold on. Organic doesn't necessarily mean natural. They are 2 different things.
If you think about it this way, they could take a ton of organic grapes, make wine, and then, pump a lot of crap into there.
Bastardize it,
and
they would
bastardize. They would still can call it organic wine.
Organically farmed.
It
is.
That's why it's tricky, because if you see a bottle of wine and it says, organic or made with organic grapes on there, sure, the grapes were organic, but then what they did with that grape juice afterwards is a free-for-all. So you would have to know that specific bottle of wine, either by knowing like the importer or the distribution, that they are doing it with like minimal or low intervention with those organic grapes.
And I know why
a little shady to me. Loopholes. They're going for loopholes there with their organic / natural. We see what you're doing.
That's why I was saying, if I see that big organic label on a bottle of wine, I'm like, I'm not bringing that.
It's out. But I mean, maybe people are wondering, and no winemaker, or I'm not in the business of it, so this is clearly just my opinion, but like, why might a big producer make wine in a non-natural way? And I think it became to rise in fame in the mid 1900s when we developed things like, we're America, we're better than the rest, and we can always do things better, better and better. And so we developed ways
so
to.
Embarrassing.
We are the best, though.
No.
Anyways,
I love that.
And then, wine becoming this. I mean, wine's always been super popular, but if you can make a product and make a shit ton of it and stabilize it with preservatives, or make it very consistent and ship it across the United States and the world and make it taste the same no matter where you ship it and no matter how long it sits around, to me, I'm gonna call that like a Capri Suns or a juice box version of wine.
Yeah.
Like, it tastes good. It'll taste the same no matter what grocery store shelf you buy it on in America. It's still grape juice at the end of the day, but it's been messed with to make it shelf stable. Now, natural wines, they are shelf stable and they will last a long time, but you just have to be very careful. The winery has to be very careful with how they make it. You have to be even more clean and even more, it's a little bit trickier for contamination since they're not using preservatives.
Yeah, the natural wineries have to go through a very, very intense
cleaning,
sanitizing. They have like a whole process because they're not adding all those chemicals and preservatives and things that help keep the wine from
shelf stable.
So they have to be super, super careful to make sure like nothing gets in there and contaminates it.
Which is, as a consumer, I sit here and I hear that and I think, you know what? Good. I'm ingesting that. I'm putting that in my body. I want you to be a little more careful and not be loading it up with bits and pieces of gunky stuff. At the end of the day, I guess it's all business. If I can make a ton more product and send it out and have that consistency, people know, once they know what they like, they know they can get it every time. I get it. It's business.
It's a business
we're also going to try and get from you guys, and we'll put in the description down below for the episode, maybe a list of some of these wineries that produce natural wines, just for our viewers, so they can sort of look them up and get a little more info on that. Here is one thing though that I have noticed. Not only are you guys ridiculously knowledgeable about this, we've learned this straight off the bat. Cheers to that. Exactly. Yeah, keep cheersing, team, because I'm about to give you some more. Not only are you crazy knowledgeable, you guys are so passionate. You are so passionate about this. So tell us how we got to the podcast. Is that what drove you? Was it the passion? Was it the love of wine? How did you arrive at the podcast as a team? No less.
I think personally,
Benjamin's baby.
We may have different responses here. For me, Remington and I sort of started this journey of natural wine together kind of around the same time. We both were getting into wine, and then specifically just started getting obsessed with natural. We hang out a lot, and we like to have fun, and we like to drink together and explore together and adventure together and travel together. So it's just kind of been, I think it started as like our little hobby that kind of exploded like a passion. And I think once we realized that we spend most of our time talking all our friends and acquaintances' ears off about natural wine, we were like, we should probably just stop annoying everybody and start a podcast.
Our friends kind of pushed us, but then we also converted so many people in our friend group.
Yeah.
So we might as well start talking and maybe convert a couple more. But I don't know. I'd love.
Why stop at a group of friends when you can go out to the masses and let everybody know about this amazingness that is natural wines?
Take it to the people.
Totally. I mean, and I personally, neither of us work in the wine industry.
No.
Neither of us, we tout that too. We don't have any certifications. Yeah. We just have at least 20 years of wine drinking experience between the two of us. That's a certification,
Remington.
It is. It's tried and true.
Now,
a lot of
team, don't mind me here as I start swinging this in. Now, I just want a little shout out, team. Little shout out. Can you see that there? Look at this. Natural wine. Wrong way, Dan. Wrong way. Wait a minute. I got to get my camera work right. There it is. There it is. as I swig this Marcel Malbec wine, imported from Martins Wines, which, by the way, is a California brand. Just a shout out there to Martins. And this is a wine that our Naked Wine podcast team has recommended as a tip-top natural wine. So, team, as I do swig here, can you talk me through what I'm tasting?
Oh, well, I wish we were tasting...
Is there a taste difference in natural wines as opposed to regular wines? Like,
I think that one, I did a quick Google search that sent me a picture. I think it's biodynamically farmed.
Okay.
So
yeah. Well,
there it is
that's
again,
a good
see?
question.
There it is again.
Taste-wise, yeah, Remington was saying he thinks that's a biodynamic one, which is also great. Again, there's like organic, biodynamic, natural. They're all a little different in there, but biodynamically farmed is a fantastic kind of wine to drink for sure.
Do you know about biodynamics at all?
I do not, team. Please tell me I got a natural wine there. The person who recommended it told me it was natural. Is that not natural wine? Because then I've just...
No, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Oh,
it is.
God.
I don't... So the thing is, like, just as there's a bazillion wines in the Ralph's or TJ's or the natural wine store or whatever place you decide to shop in, we certainly don't know all the wineries off cuff. I would generally, if I'm unsure, I'd ask the employee, pick their brain, or I generally just do like a quick Google search, which I started to do with that wine, and I found out that they're biodynamically farmed. So earlier when I was listing my top 7 and my number 1 most important, organic or biodynamically farmed was my number 1.
Yeah.
So it checks that box. We're off to a good start. It's French. I didn't look into it further enough, or I didn't find anything that was filtered or unfined, or the added sulfite levels, or the added coloring or additions. But I would guess that if they're biodynamically farmed, and I'll hop into this, if they're taking the time to harvest with lunar cycles, bury cow manure in horns and put them into their fields.
And all of this means, like, those are things that go into being biodynamic.
Biodynamically farming.
Yeah.
They use, if you have a problem with bugs, they use like a predator prey system. They'll introduce hawks and owls instead of spraying chemicals, Roundup, whatnot. If you have an issue, use. That's a good question.
But yeah, biodynamically farmed grapes are like pampered grapes.
And if they're taking all that
what
time
I'm hearing
to do
about pampered.
Then I would assume that they're not adding all the chemical additive BS in the lab.
Yeah, so if the wine says it's biodynamically farmed, I mean, that's like, it's probably a natural.
Because why take the time to pamper your grapes and then F it up?
Yeah.
Like if you want to preserve the terroir and the essence of wherever your farm may be.
Yeah, so that's another good buzzword. It's something to look for if you're wanting to drink more natural wine.
I'm imagining pampered grapes in my mind and seeing these grapes hanging off their little vine there and people walking around and patting them down so they're not sweating as much in the sun.
Yeah.
That's just me going.
So
that's what I'm saying. This is what I'm hearing, guys. Open your eyes, Dan. That's not what's happening. What I am hearing here with what you've just mentioned, which my next question follows on beautifully from that, and we talked about owls and everything was natural. Am I looking at a vast price difference there between natural wines and what I'll term commercial wines?
Good question.
That's a great question. Not necessarily. Okay, it depends. Everyone has a different budget, so that's a tricky question, right? You know, if you're used to shopping at Trader Joe's and you don't want to spend more than $6 on a bottle of wine, you're not going to find a natural or biodynamically farmed wine.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like, I would say natural wine ranges between, like, you can find some for like $15, $16, you know, all the way up to like $50, $60. And that's kind of the range. So yeah, I mean,
there's not a ton, like the normal conventional, like regular conventional wine will range from $2 chuck to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Most naturals will fall in the range of 15 to 60 or 80 tops. Most.
That is very
There's
competitive.
Outliers. But
it is competitive.
Very competitive. But you just won't find anything if it's under $15. Sorry, and drink what you like. At the end of the day, and the best. I mean, I love the sentiment. Like the best thing to drink is whatever you have in your glass. If you're with friends and people you.
But if you're gonna geek out about it,
or get into it,
I would say what we spend on an average bottle of natural wine is like around $20 to $25.
Yeah, 15 to 30 is most of our wines.
And you know, it's interesting because you gotta kind of like decide if you're going for taste or if you're going, it really depends, because I just wanted to circle back to the question you asked earlier, Dan, of if you're going to taste a difference in a natural wine, and you 100% will. Natural wines tend to taste a little funkier. They tend to have a little more like interesting notes on the nose, like things you smell, and on the tongue, things you taste. So you can kind of get more like, these may seem like negative terms, but they're like good terms. I truly think so. You'll maybe get like a little bit more essence of like dirt or mud, or like the cows in a pasture 3, things over. Maybe.
Yeah, lively. That's my favorite. Liveliness.
Yeah, or you may get like a little bit more.
Word.
Like,
yeah.
if it's being pampered and then they're not covering up with chemicals and preservatives, you can taste. It's almost, and I've used this so many times, but this is the first time on this podcast. I mentioned earlier Capri Sun juice box. I would say natural wine, for an extreme comparison, is a cold pressed juice.
Yeah.
So it's alive.
Nice.
It's not effed with. It's like the pure product. It's got character.
Real character.
It doesn't taste as bad as your first sip of a cold pressed juice, but also it's a palate profile change. Like you get used to it a little bit.
Like I would say, for somebody who's trying natural wine for the first time, don't be turned off by the smell, especially if you first pop the bottle. It's going to smell funky.
Be more acidic.
Yeah, sometimes it can smell more funky, earthy, like
barnyard horse's ass.
Yeah, barnyardy. But you just like be adventurous, feel like how lively it is in your mouth and on your tongue, and all the characteristics that come out. And everyone is like so unique. And I think that it can take a while for you to get used to it, especially if you've never had it before. But it was a great question, because yes, natural wine does have a very distinct, different taste than conventional wine.
So basically, like any few swigs, and you know what, it still tastes like wine. It still has earthy features and things like that.
Yeah.
I've got a question. We're almost wrapped up with the questions, I promise, because I could just keep hitting you guys, bombarding you guys all day.
My favorite thing to do.
You were tackling, you were working within a very large, very lucrative industry, the wine industry, especially here in California. We all know that. California has some of the best wines in the world. Now, here's what I want to know. Have you received any trolling from the regular wine industry? Any hate? Anything like that because of your podcast and because of what you are mentioning?
Not yet.
I would say maybe not on our social and whatnot, just because most people we follow and who might follow us are there for the natural wine.
Exactly.
This one goes out to my sister. She was visiting me last weekend, and she holds on to the sentiment of, she spoke to some sommelier in Chicago. It was more of like a friend of a friend was a sommelier, and he said he hates natural wines and they're flawed and they don't taste nearly as good. And I spent the whole weekend slowly feeding her, opening up different bottles, slowly preaching to her without like overwhelming her. And I think I converted her by the end of the weekend. But
yes,
it's tough because
it's not like natural wine. Okay, so for instance, I love French wine. I love it. And all European wine, but I really love the French wine, especially like a good Bordeaux. But I think that I'm always going to love French wine. And also, the French have very, very strict rules and guidelines on how they make their wine. So, like, California gets away with way more than they get away with. I mean, they're not tampering with their wine as much as we really are in the United States, to be honest. So, if I'm like at a wine store and I don't have any natural wine, then I normally will go for like a French or an Italian. An old world wine, because they've been making wine for so long, and they have very strict guidelines on how, like, in each region that the wine has to be made. So
they're even more strict, like in what they can spray. I mean, every country is different. Yeah. And you'd be surprised at what we're allowed to spray in our fields on our produce versus Europe, and what they're allowed to add for preservative levels versus the US. So
if you can't find a natural wine, I would go with go with a French or an Italian.
Or Spanish or Old World. Anywhere Old World.
Anything Old World.
Old World. Old World.
Yeah.
So that's the tip. If you can't find a natural wine, team out there, Old World is always prepared. preferred, I should say. And Remington, just to run back quickly what you said about the sommelier, as somebody who used to work in some very swanky joints as a bartender, you know why he's also not recommending a $20, $30, $40, $60, $80 bottle of wine? Because he ain't making the money by selling 1,000, 2,000. Hey, sommelier in Chicago, I see you, baby. I see you. I know what you're doing. Now, team, here we go. I promise this is the last question. I'm gonna stop, or else my producer's gonna come and strangle me. This is what we call, it's our final question. It's what we like to call on the show our genie question. So grab your magic lamp, give it a little rub, because I'm giving you one wish. When you close your eyes, now close your eyes, team, close your eyes, there it is. When you close your eyes and dream of your ideal future, close them. I want you to imagine this, see this in your mind's eye. When you imagine your ideal future for the Naked Wine podcast, what do you see? Is it a TV show where you travel the world? Is it your own natural winery? What is it we see, Naked Wine podcast team?
Personally, I love to travel so much, and I love to travel with Remington. He's a great travel bud. That's kind of how we became best friends on an epic trip to Spain together. So I would say I would love to see the Naked Wine podcast start to maybe bringing in some like travel tips for natural wine, like restaurants to go to, and start small and then get bigger, like start here in the US and then, you know, do a tour in Europe where maybe we're even writing a book on where to find natural wine and the best restaurants, the best little hidden wine bars, the wineries, the vineyards. I would love to incorporate travel with our endeavors.
City guide, wine shops, bars, restaurants, and obviously we got to curate that list. Someone's got to go do the dirty work. So we'll volunteer.
Someone's got to drink all the wine.
Or plan B is, you know, many years down the road, you have babies, I have babies with other people. Not us, by the way. And we get a winery in like Central California somewhere, maybe Los Olivos.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Big sprawling ranch. We got goats for our kids to play with. We got a little kiddie pool and all the sheds. And we have a vineyard. And we make a pet nat and one of our favorite reds, and we make it in a natural style. And we live a happily ever after.
And one of your favorite hosts to come and drink and play with the goats, of course. I knew that's what you were going to say next, Remington. Of course. Of course.
I forgot that.
Team. Natural wine place.
I like the way you guys dream. But before we keep dreaming, team, we've arrived at the part of our show that we like a lot here. Now, I told you off air quickly that we were going to have a game. I haven't told you what the game is, team. So, as well paired as you are, together as a partnership in the Naked Wines podcast, I'm going to drive a wedge between you right now because our game for the day is called It's Not That Hard, There's No Need to Whine. The game, basically, this is a true or false quiz, all about wine, obviously. We're going to hit you with some fun, interesting facts about wine. And here's the kicker. You're going to be opposing each other. So you're going to have to each dig deep into your barrel of wine knowledge and reserves for this one, team. I've got no doubt you're going to squash this like a grape.
Okay.
Oh my God. Killing it.
That was horrible. Now, this is a speed game. Are you ready, team? Kendra, as the lovely amongst the rose amongst two thorns here, although you're a good-looking thorn. Let me tell you, Remington, you're a good-looking thorn, buddy. All righty, we're going to start with you. I'm going to get your answer first. Remington, you're going to give us the answer, then we're going to find out who was right, who was wrong. Are you ready? True or false? True or false? Ready to go? Red wine is made from red grapes, and white wine is made from white grapes. Kendra, true or false? Tough one to start, I know, yeah. True.
I'm gonna go with
Remington. What do you say?
I'm gonna go with true as well, but I wish I could explain because are we talking about the outside of the grapes or the inside of the grapes? We're talking about the outside. It's true.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Who's asking the hard questions? I don't have the answer to that. I've got to be the one asking questions here. Actually, team, and this was a warm-up to be honest, it's false. Red wine gets its color because the grape skins, the outside, are left to ferment with the juice. So to make white wine, the skins are removed before fermentation, which, fairly enough, you just mentioned.
Hence why I asked for clarification.
I knew it. Terry, you're catching me out here. Alrighty, question 2. So we're just warming up. Think about this. We're just warming up. There's a warm-up like anything else. Alrighty, here's question 2. Kendra, we'll start with you again. How many standard wine bottles, we're going a little mathematical here, equals 1 Nebuchadnezzar?
Well, I'm thinking back to my Bible study days.
Bible
So
study.
Nebuchadnezzar.
I'm gonna say that's that word is, isn't it?
Bad dude. I think he's a bad dude. And he was like an
never heard of this
emperor.
guy.
Nebuchadnezzar's like an emperor or something.
He's a person?
Yeah, this bad dude.
Yeah, I
It
think
a
he was
weird
like an
story.
emperor or something.
And I'm thinking like, I'm trying to think of a number that had to do with him. I'm gonna go with like 1,000.
750 ml bottles. I'll give you a clue. If you've got 750 ml bottles, how many of those might it take to make up said Nebuchadnezzar, which is quite large?
You
Let me
said
tell you, it's bigger than
1,000.
Magnum.
And I'm gonna go with 10.
Oh, we're somewhere between you guys. It's 20. It's 20
Okay.
standard bottles actually makes up a Nebuchadnezzar. I've never seen a bottle that big, but apparently those things exist. I feel like I could swim.
20, that'd be insane. I like a good Magnum for
20
a party,
bottles?
but it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I always thought Magnum was the biggest, but apparently it's a Nebuchadnezzar at 20. Alrighty. We're motoring along here, team. We're motoring along. So, this name you're going to recognize. What was Dom Perignon's occupation when he invented champagne? Do you know what his actual job was? I'm going to give you another clue here, team. You referenced the Bible times, think something like that. Think something maybe potentially religious-y.
He was a preacher.
You say he's a preacher, and
What you got, Remington? What you got?
doesn't that set the domain? But maybe he's like he's a monk.
Oh, that's a good guess.
Bam!
Monks can make
He
good-
nailed it! Dom
Wow,
Perignon was a
that
monk!
That was
I
good.
feel, Kendra, that was great, Remington. That's kind of preachery, isn't it? The monks preach. Or they're
Yeah,
more quiet
that was-
types, aren't they?
that
They
was-
don't preach.
No, I mean,
Wonderful.
no,
That
that's
was
good.
pretty.
And
I
monks-
said it was right there. A monk preacher, a preacher monk. Question 4, team. Question 4. Now we're taking you, based on your dreams, to South American wine country here. So, which South American wine countries are...
Argentina.
Chile and Argentina.
You nailed it! You both nailed it! That was the answer. Chile and Argentina, you kids. I told you we were
Chile.
just warming up. I told you.
Chile's the new / not so new kid on the block.
Yeah.
Chile's trending up.
Yeah.
Up.
Watch out for Chile.
Ah, really? Ooh, way to go, Chile. Kicking goals. Alrighty. We're now talking French, team. I've gone from South America to France. And, Kendra, this is no pressure. You talked all about France before. What kind of French wine is traditionally made from the Pinot Noir grape? Can you tell me?
Like the region.
Starts with B. Yep.
Yeah, the Burgundy.
Bam.
I mean,
Ding, 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 ding. There it is again. There it is again. I saw you had that. I saw you had it. You're like, let me just give this one to Remington. I know about the French. Alrighty, team. Alright, I told you it's a speedy game. Here is our last question. Alrighty, we're back to true or false, the same way we started. Are you ready? I feel like you're going to
Yes.
get this one. Fortified
Okay.
wines have been distilled to have a greater alcohol content. Is this true or false? Fortified wines have been distilled to have a greater alcohol content.
Dairy and port. I know they have like 20% alcohol. They've been distilled in only what? Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, this is one that threw us all off because I double Googled this bad boy. It's false, and here's why. Fortified wines have had a brandy or another spirit added to them. So when nobody's looking, apparently some guys just bam, dropping in some, keep looking that way. I'm just gonna drop some brandy, some of that. Yeah. And we got wine here? Yeah, we got wine. Look at this.
It's embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing.
Which is,
fun.
who would know that?
If this is
Only
Jeopardy,
the
I
person
lost.
dipping in would know that. Listen,
I
you
know,
guys
right?
did great. Yes, you guys did great. Hey, listen, I made that to be extra hard as well. I made it to be. Can you not tell
I
a
love
novice
it.
ask those questions? Come on. You guys dominated. And ladies and gents at home, this is why these guys run the Naked Wine podcast. Because not only do they have really cool names, but they know a whole bunch of stuff about real natural wine. Awesome work today, team. There you have it. Another episode of Good Times and Great Games. That was our game of the week. It's not that hard. No need to whine the game. And if you have any doubts, you have doubts no more, because Kendra and Remington just smashed it. They gave us a bunch of information. Kendra, Remington, thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome to getting to know you and know more about natural wines. It was so much fun seeing you in that game as well. We love our games here. To keep up with the Naked Wine podcast for everybody at home, You know the drill, just peek down below. We've got all their information down there. Again, thank you guys so much for joining our conversation today. As ever, thank you at home for joining us on the show for another awesome episode. Please remember, if you have an artist or content creator you're following, like these awesome kids, drop their name in the comments below, along with any questions you're dying to get answered, and we will get them on the show and we will get them talking. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the show. And remember, we're live, so turn on your notifications by hitting the bell icon so you don't miss an episode. Until next time, don't forget, have fun, stay beautiful, and drink natural wine. It's better for you. Woo!